Thanks for sticking around tonight. Phase 1 of a major bridge construction project between Burlington and Winooski is officially underway. Workers with the Agency of Transportation and Engineering Company, HNTB, just shared the final draft of plans to replace the bridge connecting the two cities. People living nearby had a chance to share their thoughts tonight. Fox 44's Matt Holderman is live in Winooski with more details on what plans are in store for the bridge and what people living around it have to say. Matt?
Yeah, Lauren, that's right. In just a couple years' time, the main vein between the Onion City and the Queen City, which you can see behind me here, will become a major construction site. VTrans is looking to build a new bridge that is 21 feet wider than the current one, but as is the case with any construction project, some people have concerns about the plans.
It's a very, very busy bridge, and for anybody who's crossed it, you know that already.
For the first time in nearly 100 years, one of the most traveled bridges in Chittenden County is getting replaced, along with an intersection leading up to it. Vermont's Agency of Transportation has released pictures of its first draft of a new Burlington-Winooski Bridge project, which includes changes to the Riverside Ave-Colchester Ave intersection. Some of the main differences you can see in this design compared to the current design is Riverside Avenue will become part of a four-way intersection instead of leading it straight to the bridge, which will eliminate that island that you see in the middle of the intersection right now. This design also adds distance to the south side of the bridge and creates two lanes on the downhill part of Colchester Avenue leading up to the bridge. Construction's expected to start in 2027, and the project is estimated to cost between $50 and $60 million. Tuesday night, VTrans and engineers with HNTB shared these plans with the public, looking to hear any ideas or concerns people might have a few years in advance of the build. While there were a number of different comments, the main concern people had was about walking and biking over the new bridge, since the current bridge doesn't offer a lot of space or safety for pedestrians or cyclists.
How many of you have biked across this bridge? You know, it's something that I do often with my 3-year-old daughter on the front of my bike. Safety is a concern.
Some features of the new bridge plan that people were happy to see included barriers between the street and sidewalk, and sidewalks being 12 feet wide instead of 6. But a problem some people had with the first draft is the sidewalk is proposed to be multi-use, meaning pedestrians and cyclists would have to share that space. People argued walkers and bikers should each have their own lanes, since the difference in speed between the two can be substantial.
You're going to have people walking and people with kids and carriages, and e-bikes going 28 miles an hour.
And the project manager for this new bridge design, his name is Josh Oland. He was at the event tonight and was listening in to all of those comments and concerns that folks had. And he did promise everyone that while they are still working on those plans for the pedestrian and bike paths and perhaps updating them, he said they absolutely heard their concerns and will be taking them into consideration. This was just the first of many public input sessions that will take place likely over the next couple of years, let alone the next couple of months. We'll be sure to follow this one as it develops. But for now, live in Winooski, Matt Holderman, Fox 44 News.